Hello and welcome to University Television Presents. I am Farzan Faramarzi, and today my guest is a local journalist and an author. He worked as a reporter at the Boise Weekly, the Contra Costa Times, and the Idaho Press-Tribune. His journalism has taken him to Cuba twice, to Mexico, Israel, Lebanon, and deep into the Snake River's Hell's Canyon. He has covered the immigration and demographic beats since he got his start in journalism in Nampa, Idaho in 2001. He has produced audio reports for KQED Public Radio in San Francisco and KBSX in Boise. He has written the book Amor and Exile, and he is also the founding editor of the Blue Review, a journal of popular scholarship at Boise State University. My guest today is Nathaniel Hoffman. Welcome to UTP Present, Mr. Hoffman.
Thank you, Farzan.
How are you today?
It's a beautiful day.
So, as I mentioned earlier, you are the founding editor of the Blue Review. And why did you think we needed another newspaper at Boise State while we have The Arbiter?
Sure. The Blue Review is not exactly a newspaper. We don't cover breaking news or traditional news topics. It's a journal for faculty and some students to write about their research and their interests. And so we're more of like a scholarly blog than a newspaper. The Arbiter has a mission of, writing about student news and university news that's affecting the campus, and we are more of a journal of ideas, and we are happy to work with the Arbiter and any other campus publication. Most college campuses have many different publications, journals in different departments, and so we're just trying to add to that mix. Okay.
And when did you start publishing the Blue Review?
We started it when I came to work here in late 2012. Right before the presidential election in 2012. And our first issue, our first print issue, I should say, we're mostly online, so, but we have done some occasional print issues, was on the presidential race, and we had scholars from Boise State and from throughout the West writing about the presidential race in 2012 and how, Western issues were involved in the presidential debates.
Okay. And do you have a staff at Blue Review, and who writes for you?
Anyone can write for us. Mostly we have Boise State faculty. The majority of writers are Boise State faculty. I have one graduate assistant who works with me, Andrew Crisp, and he's written a lot about community planning and architecture and urban affairs in Boise. That's his field. He's a community planning student. We also have two interns. We've had a few interns over the years. And then I'm a half-time editor. That's my job. So that's our staff. We have a lot of freelance writers, basically.
Okay. So how do you compensate your contributors? How do you pay them?
Yeah, we believe in paying for writing. A lot of actually scholars aren't used to getting paid for their writing. They write because it's part of their job. But we want people to be professionalized and to write for a popular audience. So we have a budget. The Social Science College has given us a small budget to pay writers, and so we pay $100 to $300 depending on the length and the amount of research involved. And as I said, we're open to outside scholars as well writing for us.
So usually students who write for the Arbiter, they don't get paid. They write for the Arbiter as a part of a class.
Sure.
So who provides your financial resources?
Yeah, well, the state of Idaho does ultimately, through Boise State and the College of Social Science and Public Affairs. There's a lot of changes going on at Boise State right now, as you're aware, I'm sure. The Social Science College is actually being dismantled right now in the next couple months, and we're going to move into the School of Public Service, which is a new college that they're starting here. And part of the mission of the School of Public Service is to reach out to the community and to share the research and the resources at the university with the wider community. And the Blue Review is a key part of that effort to communicate, what people are interested in and researching and finding out at the university. So we hope that will.
So you kind of touched on my next question. So what is the Blue Review relationship to Boise State? I mean,
I'm an employee of Boise State. I'm a state employee, just like anybody else who works here. I'm staff. Not academic faculty, and we kind of live at the college level. So I work for the dean of social science and public affairs, and it's one of the programs that Boise State has supported.
Okay. You mentioned that most of your articles are online, and I can remember in December 2012, the Blue Review published an article on the Sandy Hook shooting, and it receives notable national attention. Why do you think that article went viral?
Yeah, I mean, it was a very fascinating experience, and it continues to be, actually. Like, it's still, we get letters and calls about that all the time.
About that specific article?
Yeah, and we still get a lot of traffic to that article. It's gathered over 1.6 million hits on our website, and then we also republished it in many other locations. Like, I can't even count anymore how many other websites, including major like Huffington Post and BuzzFeed. They all published it independently and got millions of reads there as well. The author of that, Liza Long, has since published a book and has gone on a national book tour, and so it was a pretty amazing experience to go through that just a few months after we started the Blue Review. I think it was a bunch of things. I mean, I think it was a very heartfelt article that really spoke to a lot of people in this country and all over the world, really. It's been translated even into several languages.
The author was from Boise or not?
She's from Boise.
Okay.
Liza Long is from Boise. She works at a different college, and I had met her. I worked for her actually at a different college for a short time. And I also think, we published it at the exact right moment, and we gave it a controversial title that people wanted to read, made people want to read it. And so part of the Blue Review being at this university is as an experiment in how to publish digitally, how to use the web to disseminate ideas and research. And so for us, I mean, looking back at that, it was a really valuable experience for all the people involved in the Blue Review to have to deal with a viral content and to examine what makes something viral and how to deal with the comment. I mean, this has got thousands of comments on it, and how to professionally handle that, and so it was a really good lesson for us.
Was it the only one who went viral, or did you have another article like that?
By degree, it was a huge viral sensation. But we've had other articles that have done really well. There's John Zeiker, who's in the anthropology department, wrote a fascinating, he's in the middle of a study.
Is he the head of anthropology department?
Yes.
I think we interviewed him in Boise in University TV Presents last year.
Oh, nice. Did he talk about his faculty time allocation study?
No, he haven't.
So they study how faculty use their time, like how much time do they spend in meetings and doing emails and writing, doing research. And he has hard data on this, and he wrote a long piece about his findings, what faculty are actually doing all day with their time. And that has gotten tons of reads, and it's a different type of virality. I would bet that most faculty in the US have read his article, because we could see from the Google Analytics that it was being passed around in emails instead of like on Facebook, So faculty were like emailing their whole departments and saying, hey, check out this study, versus Adam Lenz's mother, which was really kickstarted on Facebook.
On Facebook and social media.
So there are different levels of virality, but people are still reading, and there's been the other way we measure that. It's not just how many hits we get to the website. That's sort of a crass measure of success. It's also how much other conversation have we sparked, and so many people have written about Zeiker's faculty time allocation study. There's been like 10 other articles about the study that they found out about it through the Blue Review, which is really rewarding for us.
So do you guys usually publish just the article or multimedia pieces?
We try to include as much multimedia as possible. I'm studying digital and data journalism here, so I'm trying to learn how to use visualization tools, and so more and more we're incorporating multimedia visualizations. We've done some video. We've worked with you guys on some video projects with your department, and so yeah, we try to incorporate all the tools of the internet into our publication.
Okay, so let's talk about your book, Amor and Exile. And you've got a good rating in Amazon.
Yeah.
And what motivated you to write this book?
Yeah, I wrote the book with Nicole Salgado. She's a friend of mine from college who is living in exile in Mexico with her husband and her daughter. She's an American citizen, but she married a man from Mexico who was here illegally, and found out after the fact, after she had met him and fallen in love, that even if she married him as an American citizen, she couldn't get him papers to stay here. And it's this huge sort of loophole in immigration law that a lot of people don't really know about. And so I kept meeting people who were in her situation as I was covering the immigration story in California. I worked at the Contra Costa Times in California and wrote about immigration. And nobody could really explain it. Immigration attorneys had a hard time explaining like why this was a problem. Government officials didn't really have good answers for it. And so the more people I met, the more I wanted to delve into it. And I decided it would be a really good topic for a book because you know, a newspaper article is kind of fleeting, and you write it, people read it, hopefully it makes a small difference. But if you write a book, you know, it's something you can hold, in your hand, and it's a body of work that hopefully proves something. And
so it's more effective to be a book rather than an article?
You know, in a different way, yeah.
In a different way.
It's more long-lasting, I think. That was my goal for the book.
So would you call your book a love story?
It certainly is a love story in many different ways. I mean, we profile, you know, 7 or 8 couples who have fallen in love and all are in this situation, having met in different ways in different states, different cities in the U.S., but all find themselves facing this reality that one of the partners in this couple is in the United States illegally, and there's nothing the other spouse can do about it. So there are many love stories throughout the book, yes. Okay,
so from the early days of your career, you followed and covered the immigration and demographic beats. And why are you interested in these kind of issues?
I just think that this is the heart and soul of our country. We're a country of immigrants. I know that sounds like a cliche, but when I moved to Idaho from the East Coast in 2000 and started to work at the Idaho Press-Tribune in Nampa, you know, I noticed that there was a large Latino community there that wasn't really represented in the media very frequently. And so I started, and I spoke a little Spanish. I started to get to know people in the Latino community, and just developed my own beat of, you know, writing stories about Latinos in Idaho. And there's, you know, it's one of the biggest stories in America. Like this is one of the main things we should be writing about.
So how do you think the immigration law in the U.S. Compared to those of other countries like Australia and the other countries in the world? How do you compare that?
You know, I'm not an expert in this, but you know, per capita, if you look at, we have a lot of immigrants in the United States, obviously, but it's not even in the top 25 for, if you look at the percentage of the population that's foreign-born in countries around the world. There's many other countries that have higher foreign-born populations than the United States. I personally feel that we should be doing more to welcoming more people to the United States, immigrants. We should be doing more to solving the problem of the huge, you know, 12 million undocumented population in the United States, which is a constant debate in Congress, but never really solved. So, yeah, I mean, I think we compare favorably because of the way that immigrants do have opportunities to come here, legally and illegally, honestly, and to work when they come here. But we should be doing more to
let the people come into the United States and use
and
take the advantage
and have
freedom.
A positive experience, you know, instead of constantly debating it. We should accept that this is how our country is and make some laws that that cater to that.
Like, for example, I ask these questions because so we have the border with Mexico, so they can like pass the border and come to the United States. But for the other people, they have to stay like outside of U.S. for a certain amount of time. Like 1 year, 2 years. I've met people who were like in Turkey for 10 years waiting for their flight tickets to come to the United States. And so do you think it's fair, like, for those people who stay 10 years in Turkey or in Syria or some other places to just get the flight ticket to go to the United States as a refugee, and Mexican, they just can walk in?
I mean, I look at that a couple different ways. One, there's millions and millions of people in Mexico who are also waiting to come to the United States. And part of the problem is because we're so close to Mexico and we have such a interrelated economy, there's lots of reasons for Mexicans to come here. Work reasons, family reasons, reasons of geography and history. So bear in mind there are many Mexicans also waiting. The fact that they're waiting so long is one of the problems in our immigration system. And that, you know, that affects people all over the world. Countries that have particularly long lines of people waiting to come to the United States. China, India, the Philippines is, it's really hard to get to the United States if you're from the Philippines. Those people have to wait 10, 20 years,
Yes.
Long, long time. So that's part of what's driving the illegal immigration to the United States, is the fact that we don't have really efficient systems of bringing people here. Also, I think you should bear in mind that there are undocumented people from other countries as well, not just from Mexico. I don't remember off the top of my head, but maybe 60% of the undocumented population is from Mexico, and 40% is from other nations. So, and third, there's many different ways of being undocumented in the United States. It's not just coming over the border illegally. Many people overstay their visas. People graduate from college with student visas and never leave. Like, there are many different situations, and we talk about those in the book. There are lots of reasons that people become undocumented and sometimes don't even know about it. There's American citizens who are, accused of being undocumented, but can maybe prove that they're American citizens or don't even know they're American citizens. And so we simplify it by focusing on the border. I mean, I know I put the border on the cover of the book because it's a very potent image, but it's not as simple as just the border. Immigration is a much more complex topic.
In the United States, immigration has been a controversial issue for years, and many Americans think that undocumented immigrants, as you mentioned, cause economic problem for the U.S.
Yeah.
What's your take on that?
I look at it a little bit like the climate change debate. How
come?
It's a myth that has become widespread among people who want to believe that. And so if you ask 100 economists, 99% of them are going to say immigration helps our economy. Both legal and illegal immigration has benefited the U.S. economy, many, many times over. I brought some numbers, actually, if you want to.
Yes.
Undocumented immigrants pay $10.6 billion in taxes a year to the United States because they're paying sales tax. A lot of them are paying payroll taxes, even though they can't get refunds. You were talking about your taxes earlier. Undocumented immigrants pay their payroll taxes, but they can't, apply for a refund at the end of the year. So it's donated. That supplements our Social Security system, Social Security Trust Fund, by it's like 10% of that fund that retired Americans access.
So undocumented immigrants actually pay for Social Security?
They do, but they can't get Social Security when they retire. But they pay into it because they're working in jobs and they're on payrolls, even if they have false documents.
If they are undocumented, do they could get like a paycheck, or do they work for cash? I mean, because when you don't have a work permit, how come you can get hired?
Well, I mean, there are lots of different ways people work, but many people work under false ID and they're on payrolls in large companies. More than half of the ag industry, the agriculture industry in the United States, is undocumented workers, and a lot of those people are on a payroll. They get paychecks, they pay taxes, they pay local taxes, they pay fees when they use government offices and whatnot. So and that's a small part of it. But I mean, also you have to look at the larger cultural impacts. And in my experience, there are huge cultural, not just economic, but cultural benefits, intellectual benefits of having a diverse immigrant population in this country. So seriously, it's like climate change. Like, this is something I've read about. There's many reports. If you look it up online, you will see multiple reports, research, scholarly articles about the positive impact of immigration on our economy. And yet, people in Congress who oppose immigration use this as a tool to fight immigration reform. I'll just say one more thing. Most undocumented immigrants can't access many government services, social welfare services, even though we think maybe they can. They're not eligible for that. So they're paying taxes, but they're not getting government benefits. That's another thing that is sort of a myth of the right of people who oppose immigration reform.
So basically, they are paying tax like like a legal immigrants, but there is no tax refund, and they couldn't use most of the federal services.
Yeah, right?
So here in Idaho, we are far from the Mexican border. Is there evidence of issues with undocumented immigrants here in Idaho?
What do you mean by issues?
Like, do we have any undocumented immigrants here, or?
This is something, so you'll find if you read Amor and Exile, there are undocumented immigrants everywhere, in small towns, working in places you would not imagine, in our schools. Idaho has between 30 and 50,000 undocumented immigrants by various measures, living, in every county in the state. More than half of those people live with a U.S. citizen child or maybe a U.S. citizen spouse. Half of them have been here for 5 years or longer, so they're long-term residents. Some have been here 20 years. People with deep ties to Idaho, people who have worked in Idaho businesses for generations. And so, yeah, I mean, there's huge needs for the undocumented population in Idaho and every state.
Okay, so since you worked as a journalist, I want to ask you something about journalism. And
sure.
What do you think is the primary tool or tools all journalists should have?
Tools, well, do you mean like physical tools or?
Well, I leave it on you. So
yeah.
You tell me, is either physical tools or intellectual tools?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going to say a cell phone. This is what came to my mind. But the reason, you may be different than you think. The reason is journalists need to make phone calls. Like, there's a lot of journalism now that is like Googling things and blogging about it. But the fundamental role of a journalist is to pick up the phone and challenge people and gather information from actual sources. And so there's lots of things you can do with a cell phone that are awesome. You can make videos, you can record audio, you can search for information, you can read, well,
you are
whatever.
talking about phone-based journalism.
But I'm talking about, actually calling people and interviewing them and telling the public what they have to say. And calling more than one person too, multiple sources. So, yeah, I think that picking up the phone and calling somebody, whether it's a cell phone or not, is really a fundamental tool of journalism that is sometimes lost.
Oh, how come? Can you give me an example of that?
Well, read the paper any day and count the number of interviews, like actual interviews that you'll see, and you tell me.
Do you believe, like in journalism schools, they teach students, like students journalists, to see something, some issues, and ignore the others?
I didn't go to journalism school, actually. So I don't have that experience of going through journalism school. And, I think probably, my hope is that they teach people to see things from multiple perspectives. I mean, that's what a journalist
What I'm talking about is a different bias in journalism.
I feel that bias is actually sort of an antiquated concept in journalism. I mean, at this point in history, we've accepted that all humans have some bias. I was listening this morning to the latest This American Life episode, which is about, they've done this 2-part radio series on how police officers view this spate of police shootings and killings across the country. And it's amazing that two people can see an event from like completely different perspectives. You should really listen. Like it's a really well done report. So I've accepted as a journalist that bias is inevitable and exists in everything we do. And so a more powerful concept for me is transparency and acknowledging that you have bias and still trying to do a good job of being fair and explaining where you're coming from and how you know what you know is a more useful concept that should be taught in journalism schools than just trying to avoid bias.
So I want to add this. I went back to my previous question and say, okay, so transparency and fact checking are primary tools plus cell phone. These three.
Yeah, well, right. Use your phone to be transparent and to
check your facts. Okay. So how do you feel about the future of journalism in Idaho?
I'm hopeful for the future of journalism in Idaho. There's a lot going on at Boise State, actually, in journalism realms. The communication department is hiring more journalism instructors. There's a new grant opportunity through the Idaho Media Initiative that's giving investigative journalism grants to Idaho journalists.
Is that for Boise State students?
It's for anyone. It's open to any media in Idaho.
Okay.
Freelance journalists and journalists at newspapers and TV and radio stations. It's at the Idaho Media Initiative. You can look it up online. They have like 5 $2,000 grants to do some investigative journalism.
Are you the part of the Idaho Media Initiative or not?
Yeah, I'm on their board or their committee. It's a very new project, so.
Do they have a website?
Yeah, Idaho Media Initiative. I don't know the exact website, but you can find it online.
Okay, just Google Idaho Media Initiative, okay?
Yeah.
Is it like a Boise State affiliate or not?
Yeah, it is.
It is.
It's also through Boise State. Seth Ashley in communication is one of the advisors, and Carissa Wolf, who teaches journalism classes, is running the project.
The project, okay. Yeah. And so, do you have any other plans for write another books?
I would like to write another book someday. It was a huge amount of work. We're translating Amor and Exile into Spanish right now.
Okay.
And so we have a draft of it in Spanish, and we're going through chapter by chapter and making sure that the concepts and some of the slang that's in there has been translated correctly, which is really interesting for me. I'm learning a lot of Spanish through that process.
Okay. So you told me that this is available online, like electronically. Can you explain how can we get the book, like in Kindle or iPad? How can we download the book?
Well, it's on the Kindle store at Amazon, and it's at local bookstores here, and it's in Colorado and Baltimore, Syracuse. You can get it in bookstores in certain places. And you can get it on our website, amorandexile.com.
Okay. You have a website for the book?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Oh, that's nice.
You got to have a website for your book.
For your book. Do you have like a T-shirt and a cap, all this stuff?
I don't have a T-shirt or a cap. No.
So is there anything else you'd like to add?
No, but this has been a really great conversation.
Oh, nice. So I see we are out of time. I want to thank Nathaniel Hoffman for being here. And I'm Farzan Faramarzi, and until next time, have a wonderful day.